Welcome. I'm Marybeth McAteer-Margolis, the Community Outreach Director at MMTV. Thank you for joining us today for this special COVID-19 edition of On Main Street. Joining me today as we discuss the impact of this virus on all levels of our community is Congresswoman Katherine Clark, representing the 5th Middlesex District, which Melrose is a part of. Former member of the state delegation, former Melrose School Committee member, and resident of Melrose. Thanks for joining us, Katherine.
Oh,
so
good to be with you.
Yeah, great. Is Kate Lipper-Garabedian, our new state representative, representing the 32nd Middlesex District at the State House, and also a former city councilor at large on the Melrose City Council. And finally, we have a familiar face on MMTV, our Mayor Paul Brodeur. Paul is joining us today for this special edition, and he is a first-time, pretty newly elected mayor, hitting the ground running, so to speak. Also a former member of our state delegation and past member of at-large City Council Board of Aldermen. So what we'd like to do today is kind of examine the 3 different levels that we have represented to see what people are doing, what the issues are, what the holdups are. I'm sure some of our guests will have various resources for you to access, and we will get those links up for you at the end of the show, so you'll be able to just access them all together. So that being said, we're going to start with Congresswoman Clark. Again, thank you for joining us. Love your El Pond background there. It gives us a little hope of spring coming, if nothing else. How are things going for us down in Washington? I know you're mostly up around here now, but you're still working hard. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Marybeth, and thank you for including me. And yes, I get to be virtually by El Pond here by the but I just want to thank everyone on this with Paul and Kate for all the work they're doing. This is a partnership to be able to address the effects of this pandemic on our local community here in Melrose. And one of the things that we understand is the tremendous impact on people's economic lives as well as on their health that is posed by this pandemic. And in the month of March, we have passed 3 bills in Congress to be able to address the stress that is being put on states and local budgets, on hospitals, and on small businesses and people who have seen either they've lost their jobs or seen a dramatic reduction in their income as we have gone into social distancing and really closed everything but essential businesses. So there are sort of a couple of buckets I want to go over quickly about relief for people and what you can do. 2 of the programs are through the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and one is disaster relief. This is aimed at getting up to $10,000 in a grant. It is not something you have to pay back to business owners so they can get some immediate relief. And following up on that is a loan program. It's called the PPP, Triple P, and it is loans up to $10 million. And they are 100% forgivable if you have retained your full-time employees by the end of June. Of course, some of these timelines may change as we continue to take in an analysis of data of where we are with the pandemic, but that is the current timeline. We urge everyone to apply for these. We know that it has not been a smooth rollout. States are still waiting for some of the technical assistance from the Department of Labor. but we urge you to apply, and we are looking in Congress at adding more money to these programs because we know demand is high, and we know that it has been difficult for some small businesses to find a lender who can process this loan. So we're addressing both things in the fourth package that we're currently negotiating with the Senate. Other program that is available to people is the unemployment insurance. The state announced yesterday that as of April 30th, it will be accepting unemployment insurance applications from the enlarged pool. Congress expanded eligibility to include people who wouldn't normally be able to collect unemployment insurance. That's contract workers, who we think of as people in the gig economy, people who file 1099s. They will be able to apply under the state system as of April 30th. The benefit will be retroactive until back to February 20th. And the $600 a month, you don't have to apply for that separately. That is automatic for those contract workers newly eligible. We'll go back to March 29th. I also want to let people know that student loans, if you have a federal student loan, those are, you do not have to pay on that loan up to September 30th. That's the current time frame. And if you have any questions on whether you qualify for that, please call 1-800-FED-AID, FEDAID, and they can answer those questions. As we go forward, we're negotiating the next package that would be additional $250 billion to the small business loans, $100 billion to hospitals and nursing homes and other healthcare institutions, $150 billion to states, and a 15% increase in SNAP benefits, because we know that food insecurity is an issue that is really challenging our communities as people see income restrictions and just the ability to be able to get food, for example, at schools where many kids get the nutrition that they need and now are moving to picking those lunches up other places. But we understand that the food insecurity is a real issue that, whether you're a senior or a child, has been having a true impact on our communities. So that's an overview of the programs and where we're headed in Congress. And I'll turn it back to you, Marybeth.
Thank you, Catherine. That's really helpful information. And we'll be running some of those links, particularly the student loan phone number at the end of the show. And I appreciate all of your work. I'm sure everybody in the community does. And if you could also give us a contact information for your office, so that if anybody is interested in reaching out in particular for any major issues, they can check in with you. Okay, next let's hear from our new state representative, Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Thank you, Kate, for joining us. You've really jumped right into the fire here, just being inaugurated on what, end of February, beginning of March?
It was, I think, 2.5 weeks ago, actually. So I'm just finishing up my second full week in March.
Boy, a lot
has happened for all of us, so it's hard to keep track at this point.
Right. So I know you've been able to have one episode already with the mayor on MMTV, but things have been changing daily. So give us a little update as to what's going on the state level and what we can hopefully look forward to in the future.
Sure. Well, it's nice to be here with everyone. And I'd start out by just saying it's a real pleasure to get to work in partnership with Catherine and her office. They have been great about sending resources to the state delegation in terms of some of the programs that she was just speaking about. And likewise with Paul and the city administration, we've had some really good conversations both about the resources that are currently available in the community and the preparations that are going on at, for example, the hospital as we near the surge of infection. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk a little bit about what's happening at the state level on Beacon Hill. And I've seen in my short tenure in this position, the degree to which we are moving quickly to put in place policies and programs to support families. I know this is a really scary time for so many of us, people who are concerned about their health, their well-being, how they're going to have food on the table. And so to the degree that my office can be helpful, please consider reaching out to us to help navigate this time. In addition to the information that the Congresswoman shared that's really helpful around small businesses and businesses generally, as well as unemployment insurance, there are things that are happening at the state level as well to address these two areas. I've put out a couple tables that synthesize some of this information with hyperlinks to the different documents you might need to access or the phone numbers you would call. And so we'll be sure to get those over to MMTV and you can access them online. For small businesses, in addition to the federal loan and grant programs that were mentioned, last week, I think it was last week now, the governor signed into law an initiative to support our restaurant industry. I mean, Melrose has some amazing restaurants here in town. And so the law that the House and the Senate put together for the governor's signature allows for restaurants that were already permitted to sell beer and wine to do so through takeout and delivery. And that maybe provides a little bit of economic stimulus to that important small business group. On the unemployment side, I would say this is the #1 call that we're getting in my office, the most emails that I'm receiving. My aide and I are reaching out on a daily basis to the Department of Unemployment Assistance to assist you with navigating a system that many of you have probably never needed to contact before. So I recognize it's confusing. I'm confused by it sometimes as well, but we are finding a really high level of responsiveness from the DUA staff, and so we're happy to help you with putting those calls through. A couple things that I mentioned with the mayor the last time we were on remain true. So there used to be a 1-week waiting period when you applied for unemployment benefits. That has been waived. Typically as well, if you were applying for unemployment benefits, you would every week need to attest to the fact that you were seeking work. And that has also been relaxed because we recognize at this time it's not safe to be seeking work and that many of us or you who have lost work are intending to be rehired as soon as this crisis is over. I also am happy to say that the DUA announced, I think yesterday, that they're putting together a Spanish webpage because we're hearing a lot of concern about people having trouble navigating all the documentation and the information. So they're going to be really focused on ensuring that that population of our neighbors is also able to understand and move through the system. And as the Congresswoman mentioned, we now have more guidance from DUA around implementation of the CARES Act. So if you go to the website now, there's a frequently asked questions document. There's a step-by-step guide to applying. They are also doing another contact form, and they're setting up more of these virtual town halls where you can call in or join by your smartphone or your laptop to ask questions, to hear general information. I did one of those already. It was very helpful. I'll try to join another one just to hear now that I expect a lot more questions will be coming out about the federal stimulus package. Also at the state level, we put in place a law related to municipal flexibility. So in our district, that would be Malden, Melrose, and Wakefield now have some greater flexibility around their permitting processes, as well as tax deadlines for collecting property taxes, exemptions, and deferrals. We also moved back the deadline for filing your state taxes to align with the federal delays till July 15th. And then finally, yesterday, the House and the Senate agreed on a bill that is now on the governor's desk related primarily to education and to our schools. So one thing that it would do is it would waive the MCAS testing requirements for this school year. So those would be no longer required and they would not occur given the amount of time that students have been out of school. It also would delay the date by which school districts need to submit their 3-year plans related to how they're going to implement reforms based on the additional funding that is coming through the Student Opportunity Act. Those plans were originally due on April 15th. Now they have been delayed at the discretion largely of the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education. A couple things that are in the pipeline include a housing bill. So the House passed one a week ago, and now the Senate and the House are negotiating and sort of working on a compromise bill. Beyond that, you'll see a lot of developments coming just from the Baker administration, which can be very nimble in enacting executive orders and putting out policies through the different departments. So this week we saw guidance come out from the Department of Public Health related to grocery stores and requiring that they limit the number of people coming in to 40% of their typical maximum capacity. We also saw an infusion of $800 million of additional state funding for the healthcare system. And yesterday there were 3 executive orders that were signed, all with an intention to expand our healthcare capacity by allowing, for example, foreign educated doctors to practice, nursing school graduates and those who are going to graduate at their final semester are able to be involved in providing healthcare if they're under direct supervision. And there is a requirement that insurers cover all medically required costs for COVID-19 treatment. These are just a few of the examples of things coming out. I'll continue to try to put out newsletters. I'm going to try to do it now twice a week because there's so much happening. There are also the tables that I mentioned about unemployment, small businesses. We also have one on food security and some of the different food banks that are nearby and hotlines you can call to apply for SNAP benefits. Another one on personal well-being and one on grief and grieving. So we'll continue to develop those and refine them over time and add some more to the degree that those are helpful for people.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And thank you so much for being right on top of things and just jumping right in. I'm sure that the delegation has been really working hard. Certainly the governor has been showing some great leadership and a lot of flexibility, as you have mentioned. And hopefully lots of these programs are filtering down to the local level, particularly some of the economic flexibility that you were discussing. And I think that is something that is going to impact our city as Mayor Brodeur moves forward. And why don't we let you give us the local perspective on what's going on, Paul? You've certainly been right out there with the community every single night at MMTV, telling everybody, trying to update us with the latest going on in town. I think people would be interested to know how the city is accessing these resources from the federal and state government as well. So,
sure, and I appreciate the opportunity to join my colleagues in the state and federal government. They've been terrific partners all the way through. This is just another test of the relationship, and everyone is certainly coming through with flying colors. I apologize. I had to change backgrounds here, and it's a little bit harder to see because my wife is on a call like this right now. She is working from home, and I tell you, no rest for the weary in that perspective, the folks that are working from home. I know it's a big change, but we also know there are folks that don't have that choice, and we are mindful of the service that they're giving and appreciate all that they're doing. I'd like to start by thanking folks in Melrose and reminding them about the importance of social distancing. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but it is what's working, and it's really, really important. We need to flatten the curve. It helps not just you and your family, but it helps your neighbors, your friends, and folks you might not even know, because we need to preserve those medical resources for the most sick among us when the surge comes. We are right on the precipice of that. The resources that have been made available through the state and federal government, obviously to our individual residents and small businesses, the resources that are coming online are going to be very, very helpful. And helping turning that on, I know can be a challenge through my past service, and I can tell you that our delegation at both levels is working hard, not just to create the programs, but also to make sure that the glitches get worked out. It's very, very challenging from a bureaucratic perspective, to turn this stuff on, and they've been working hard as you could ever want to make sure our folks are taken care of. The chief benefit that we are going to see is around from a city government perspective right now is the ability to get reimbursement from the federal government for some of the unusual expenses that we've incurred in terms of dealing with the virus and dealing with the pandemic. So things like the potential for police and fire overtime costs, or cleaning needs, or whatever the case may be around that. Those are going to be very, very, very helpful resources. We could always use more, and I know that particularly in the U.S. House and Speaker Pelosi have been very aggressive in trying to get additional aid to cities and towns, and that is much appreciated. On the local front, the resources that are available are the Melrose Helps effort, which is something that we've been very, very proud of. It is an effort, volunteer effort within the community to reach out in particular to our seniors that might need some help, might not have the ability to get out the way they're used to doing. And that involves basically volunteers calling in to our seniors just to check in, to see what they might need, but also being mindful that sometimes isolation can be a big problem for folks. Just having a friendly voice to talk to is an important part of that conversation. And as Kate mentioned, in terms of the local fee and tax relief, in terms of meeting deadlines and such, we very much appreciate the legislature's work on that, particularly the work that Senator Lewis and Kate have done on that. And we have implemented everything we can to the full extent of the law. The details are important to track, and we have information about that from the assessor's office on the city website. And I also want to, part of the job, I guess, is helping folks have outlets, things that you don't really think of government historically as doing, but try to give folks opportunities with things that might sound a little bit silly in normal times, but like, Unicorn Day or the Clap Because We Care, those programs really make a difference. They aren't world changing, but I can tell you, particularly from hearing from some of the folks that work at Melrose Wakefield or out in some of the other medical facilities that our residents work at, they are incredibly touched and strengthened by that gesture, by our community, that recognition that we get it. We want them to be as safe as they can be, and it helps reinforce all the things that need to be done around social distancing. So again, kudos to all the folks that are doing that work, and I really want to thank the community for all the support they've given to some of these programs that are just trying to lift people up at a time when we really need it.
Thank you, Paul. I think it certainly has been challenging for a lot of people in the community, and I know that you're correct that those little programs might sound kind of silly, the little, neighborhood scavenger hunts, that kind of thing, but it does connect the community, and certainly our healthcare workers at the hospital and in Boston, need all the support they can get. In fact, MMTV is participating with one of our programs called Let's Talk Melrose, and we've started a fund, and we're raising money to feed the front line at the hospital every day. Pretty much, we're sending food over. We have a person who's coordinating that. On that note, in terms of people helping and Melrose Helps, I volunteered for that. It's an easy process. You do it right online. Are there, like, for instance, have any of you found, have you been able to increase your staff so that you're able to reach, more constituents are able to call you and find out, particularly some of the older people who might not have as much familiarity with being, with going online, and they really want to talk to somebody about whatever their issue is. Katherine, are you finding that you've been able to add a few people to help with that, or?
We have not been able to add people, but I do want people to know that even though our physical office in Malden and Framingham, both of those offices are closed, we check the voicemails regularly, the website, emails, and I want to give you our phone number is 617-354-0292. And please call. We will answer those calls. We are working as hard as we can to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to do, and it has run the gamut, that we are there to help and give you guidance on how you can access services, food programs, help with utilities, information on mortgage and rent forbearance, how you can apply for these SBA programs for small businesses, and any of the regular constituent issues that continue to come up. We're there to address. We're working hard, and people are working remotely, but putting in long hours to make sure that we are there for those questions. And one area I do want to highlight that we get a lot of questions on are the direct payments and when people should expect them. We do expect them to start going out around April 13th, next week. And that will be if you have direct deposit information with the IRS, those checks will start to come in the next few weeks and be directly deposited. If you do not make enough money to file income tax, you can still get this direct payment. And the IRS is setting up a portal, but TurboTax has a portal that's open so that you can get your direct deposit information in. Everyone will get a check, but the paper checks will be coming much later. So to get the fastest relief, just make sure that you have filed your tax return for 2018 or 19 and have that direct deposit information available.
That's great to know. And so people who might have worked in the gig economy, or maybe people who are on Social Security and are not filing taxes, will still be eligible to apply through the IRS portal. Is that what you're saying, more or less?
Yeah, everyone who files taxes in any way will be able to have that information. If you already have your direct deposit information on hand with the IRS, that should come automatically to you. But if for some reason you haven't filed taxes, please do it. So you can get this money for 18 or 19. But if you do not file with direct deposit, and some of that is because for very low income people who aren't required to file any kind of income tax, they may not have that information with the IRS because they haven't needed to. There is going to be a way to do that directly through an IRS portal. Or right now, TurboTax is offering a free way for people to go on and get that direct deposit information there. Again, if you have any questions, please contact our office. We're happy to walk you through it.
Great. And Kate, are you seeing a lot of people inquiring about that, or are there other federal resources that you think our state is able to access or should be able to access? What's your experience with this kind of support that we're getting from the federal government?
Sure. I think the two big buckets that the Congresswoman hit on are the ones that we're hearing the most about from a federal perspective. So the small business hit that, and in terms of the grant programs and the loan programs. So I joined the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. They did a small business administration webinar earlier this week to sort of answer questions and help people understand these two opportunities that she spoke about. It was, you may see on social media, it was a little difficult for me to totally pay attention. I am working from home. As many of you know, I have 2 young sons and a dog who decided that it was time for her to have some of my attention all in the same hour. But I know that Senator Lewis put together another one of those webinars yesterday. My aide was able to attend that. I had a different commitment. So there are opportunities that people can, plug into and get information, and certainly our office is taking advantage of those. There's also the unemployment benefits piece, which is, again, the #1 constituent outreach that I've received. A lot of phone calls. I think you all will put up our contact information at the end of this, but my office number is 617-722-2020. I haven't actually been in that office yet, but I understand it exists, and we do have a phone number up and running. So you can call us as well. We can help. We have a specific person who we reach out to on a daily basis to discuss both the state benefits that many people are already tapping into and have already applied for, as well as the federal benefits that are now coming online. And as Congresswoman said, it's a bit of a staggered process as we've gotten the information, and as the mayor mentioned, as we have to build sort of the infrastructure to process these things. But certainly, I'm very cognizant of how important it is for people to be able to access these financial resources as quickly as possible. And we're happy to help you navigate that.
Thank you. And I was listening to an interview last night with the governor of California, and he was saying that they have added hundreds of additional staff to their DUA, that Department of Unemployment Insurance, because of all the calls. Are we anticipating anything like that in Massachusetts, or has it been already happening? Or
that's a great question. My sense is that has already happened to some degree.
Okay.
I think we have increased tremendously the number of staff, people in call center. People are again operating from their homes, and it takes a little bit of time for someone new to get trained and up to speed on this. So I'm hopeful that sort of the groundwork has been laid, and we're going to see an exponential increase in the capacity to be more quickly responsive.
Thank you. And so, bringing it down to the local level, Paul, what are you experiencing that relates to the state and the federal resources? Are you running into are you hearing from constituents about any roadblocks? Is there anything that you feel Congresswoman Clark or Representative Lipper-Garabedian should be thinking about in relation to Melrose and our challenges here at the local level that they haven't covered already? Or how are you feeling about it all?
I can honestly say no, because the partnership is so strong. We talk every day, or as much as we need to. As a matter of fact, I know the Congresswoman is going to be on a call with municipal leaders from across the state tomorrow. So and the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor's team are available daily, and certainly the Lieutenant Governor herself does a weekly call. So the communication has been outstanding. No complaints about that. In terms of adding staff, we certainly haven't in terms of payroll. But again, I want to reflect back on the volunteer effort, because we've had over 150 people so far volunteer to help out with Melrose Helps, and that's something we just can't do it by ourselves. The city employees across the board have been tremendous. Many of them have been repurposed because, for things like the rec department can't run any programs right now, but that staff is working incredibly hard on alternative programs, some of the things we've already talked about in terms of being out in the community. So it's really just, everyone stepping forward together to do what they need to do to keep things going. And I want to say one thing that Katherine mentioned that is really important for folks to know is, it probably doesn't seem like it, but we're not just doing COVID. Potholes are being replaced. The schools in this new world are doing everything they can to deliver as much in terms of learning opportunities they can to our students across the board. And it's just been impressive, the dedication that people have shown. And in terms of outreach, I will say we try to communicate across as many platforms as we can. So that would be locally, Everbridge, all forms of social media, the newspapers, even though that's a little bit clunky given the way that things change so quickly. But it's important to know that if you do need help at whatever level, the emergency fund, I want folks to understand that is still out there. It still exists, just as it always have, to help people get through things like this. So you can certainly contact my office about that. But I want to encourage people to understand that there's no wrong door in terms of our 3 offices. If you happen to call about a Social Security problem, we can't solve that, but we can make sure we get you to a place where you can. I know if someone calls into Catherine's office about an unusual need that a federal program might not exist for, she's going to direct them to the emergency fund or to some state resources that Kate might know about. So I just can't stress enough how important it is, that cooperation has been. It's been bipartisan, and it's all been focused on helping people in trouble. And again, and flattening that curve, making sure that we can get through this as best we can by helping each other.
Thank you so much, Mayor Brodeur, and thank you for your continual outreach through all those different resources, particularly our station, MMTV. And I think, we really have an advantage over many other communities because we have 3 highly qualified, dedicated people right here with us today who have all served at the local level. And so each one of you, although you may not be at the local level anymore, you really get what's going on here. And that's reflected in all of your decisions and I think all of your efforts that we see coming out of your offices. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm sorry we don't have more time to chat with you. I know you're all really busy representing your constituents in Melrose and beyond. And we look forward to the day when we can all maybe sit down together and do this in person.
Together in a studio, that would be nice.
And celebrate all of the successes that we have been working so hard for. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Marybeth McAteer-Margolis for MMTV. Want to thank Congresswoman Katherine Clark, State Representative Kate Lipper-Garabedian, and Mayor Paul Brodeur for joining me today on Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you.